Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So it's coming up springtime, which is usually the big selling season in real estate. And so I thought I'd check in with Anna Oliver, who is a real estate agent that covers the whole GTA and has also been a real estate agent in the Atlantic provinces and Halifax, I believe. And she's got a fascinating background. She was an infantry training person in the Canadian military in Bosnia at one point in time, has I don't know whether it's a black belt or something like that in martial arts, and decided that she would give that up and become a real estate broker. So it's really kind of a fascinating background. Anna, how are you? Welcome to our show.
I'm great, Brian. How are you doing? Thank you for the great introduction.
So after being an infantryman trainer in the military in Bosnia, why go into real estate? That sounds like you should go on to do infantry training somewhere else.
Well, see, like my role with the Canadian military was more of a support role. So it was basically a 6-month contract. So I was able to kind of dip my toes in the water without getting fully involved. So it was a great opportunity to serve the country without the full commitment that a lot of our men and women give to our country. So it was a great opportunity that way. And real estate was always a passion for me growing up, having moved quite a bit as a child. The excitement of looking at new neighborhoods and homes was always sort of a highlight. And, you know, with my dad's career, we'd move around every few years. So it was sort of like in the back of my mind. And I've always was fascinated with real estate, homes and decorating, architecture, construction. So it was sort of a natural progression for me after I decided to give up working with the government. So I was very fortunate to be able to segue into that.
And I hope this isn't inappropriate, but you don't look like the type of person that would be into martial arts. Explain that.
So I guess like I've always been described as having a bit of an intense personality. So and I loved watching movies, like action movies growing up. So I was always fascinated with the stunt actors, and kickboxing was really a passion. So in my late teens, I got into kickboxing, Muay Thai, and the truth is I'm not a very good kicker. So I got more into the boxing side, and I love the intensity of the workout. And to the chagrin of my dad, having spent so much money on my teeth growing up, it was definitely controversial with my family, but there was always something about the complexity of the training and the intensity of it. So I really enjoyed it. And then after a few concussions, I had to give it up. So golf and tennis are more my speed now.
So what do? You actually get into a ring and you kick and you punch and you box and you wrestle?
So I did Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So I always wanted to learn, if I got thrown down, I wanted to be able to get back up. And I used to do one-on-one sparring with mostly males, and for 3-minute rounds. And it was the best workout I could ever describe. And unfortunately, yoga was never my thing. So boxing was a very good fit for me. So I was able to burn off some steam and have a great workout and just really get into the zone. And yeah, I really, really miss it. So
that must set you up really well for real estate negotiations.
Yes, it does. I think the discipline that's involved with it and the intensity is sort of, I think, like you said, I don't look like somebody that would gravitate towards those sports. So it's a little bit disarming, I think, when you find that out. And it was always very good for stress relief. And for that 1 hour while I was training, I was able to put the phone away and just really kind of get into it. So I do.
You're certainly not going to be checking the phone in the middle of martial arts competition.
Absolutely not. They get very mad. Actually, I'd probably have a few black eyes after that, but that'd be my own doing.
And I was interested that during our interaction, you've posted on Facebook almost every week a different almost podcast on different things in regards to real estate and different lessons. Why did you decide to become so educational in your posting of different things?
So in my 18 years, I've always noticed that real estate always seems to be kind of top of mind. So even like conversations in the morning at the dog park, real estate would always come up. And having sold for 18 years, I'd be at cocktail parties, dinner parties, people always want to know about the market. And one thing I always love is kind of the stories behind the scenes and the educational aspect of it. And, and I find sometimes real estate agents get a bad rep. So I like to kind of show kind of what we do behind the scenes, like the amount of work and what's involved. So to educate kind of the public and kind of show show like the variety of like what other agents offer and to like give the public a bit more of an understanding that way. And I really enjoy it. So I like talking and I like talking about real estate. So,
Well, I found them very interesting and helpful, and we're going to review a bunch of them.
okay.
We're going to talk tonight about landlord issues, about tenant issues, about
Yes.
real estate commissions, about what's the right time to sell, selling in the winter. Anna's got a whole review of a bunch of different interesting podcasts that we're going to quickly touch on to sort of give people a sense of the real estate market. And so maybe my first question would be, why do real estate agents get a bad rap?
Well, unfortunately, it has a lot to do with public perception. And because there's a lot of money involved with the commissions, a lot of people will think that real estate agents don't really have the best interests of the client at heart, that they're just after the money and it's a quick fix. So, just like any industry, there's some bad apples out there. And unfortunately, those bad apples give us a bad reputation. And people see what the commissions are and the remuneration that's involved. And it's a lot of money. So some agents make it in maybe a good way. We make it look easy and we think it's, and people think that maybe we didn't earn it. So I think there's a bit of a reputation that way. And in the reality too, up until recently, it was considered a low barrier access career. So like when I was licensed, it was a 3-week course. And if you think about that, that's a bit scary to think that somebody who's only done a 3-week course can go out and help you basically buy or sell your largest possession, your most expensive asset. So unfortunately, I think that's where it comes into.
We're chatting tonight with Anna Oliver, who is a real estate broker, and she's done a bunch of podcasts, about a dozen, if not more, podcasts on different issues associated with real estate. We're going to go through a bunch of these questions and ask Anna to tell us a little bit about it in just a minute. We're going to take a break for some messages. Stay right with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Anna Oliver, who is a real estate broker. She's with a firm I hadn't heard about before. What firm are you with, Anna?
I'm with Sotheby's International Realty Canada,
which is a firm that you sort of hear about internationally, but it's not one of the biggest brands in Canada, is it?
No, it's not. We're fairly new in Toronto. We've been in Toronto for about 15, 20 years, and we usually have a smaller more of a boutique presence. But having said that, there's about 150 agents that work out at the Toronto location, and we have offices nationwide.
And you cover the whole GTA, correct?
Cover all GTA, that's correct. I'll go as far east as Bowmanville, as far north as Beaverton. Actually, I was in the Mono area on the weekend in Innisfil and Schaumburg, and Mississauga and Burlington as well as the Toronto area. Awesome.
So one of the podcasts you had was The Truth About Being a Landlord. Tell us about some of the truths about being a landlord, because lots of people think about buying investment properties and renting them out. What are some of the truths that you talked about in your podcast?
So in my recent podcast about landlord and tenant issues is that a lot of financial advisors recommend buying land or buying investment properties. So with the popularity of Airbnbs a few years ago, it was a great way for, like business people or just small time investors to get into the market and be able to generate a very good return on their investment. So they'd buy condos and be able to rent them out at a premium as opposed to having a long-term tenant. So unfortunately, the City of Toronto changed the regulations on that. So they made it a little bit more difficult, actually quite a bit more difficult for Airbnb to be in condos and residential properties. So they brought in rules. So a lot of people look at buying investment properties and real estate as a great way to generate a second income. But the truth is, it's not that easy. There's a lot of rules, regulations, legislation in place to protect the landlord and the tenant. So my last podcast on it was things to consider with being a landlord. And the big thing is you're responsible for somebody else's home. So you're held to a higher standard, and some landlords don't realize or recognize the importance of that. So the safety of another individual is in your hands. And, I go into some homes and I see basements that were improperly retrofitted into apartments they don't meet safety. If there was a fire, heaven forbid, people wouldn't be able to get out, regulations, it's horrible. So, but people look at it as a great way to generate some income, but you have to follow the rules, you have to follow laws, and you have to consider all the insurance issues and the responsibilities. And it's not just easy money. You have to consider, if you get the wrong tenant in, it's not that easy to evict somebody. So my example that I shared with in my podcast was a gentleman, and it was a home that was on for sale, and it was being rented out, and the tenant had serious issues with the landlord, and the tenant despised the landlord and was going out of his way to make sure the home did not show properly, wasn't paying rent, hadn't paid rent in almost 12 months. The home was in complete squalor and would show up on showings just to scare potential buyers and investors off. And to the point where it was horrendous. And the reality is, you can't just remove somebody from your property, even if they don't pay rent, even if they damage the property. So these are things to consider. And the other thing is, like, if you do get a tenant who's not paying rent, then you're on the hook. The mortgage companies aren't forgiving for that. So you still have to come up with your mortgage payment. And these are things to consider, that if something were to go wrong, can you afford it? And I represent a lot of people who buy investment properties as a source of income, as an investment strategy, but it's not that easy.
You had another podcast on the Nightmare Tenant. Is that the one you were speaking of?
Yes, that was a Nightmare Tenant. And I've seen my fair share. There's people out there who abuse the system. They know the landlord tenant board, and they know that there are certain rules. And right now with COVID, you can't evict somebody. So it's people who aren't paying rent. And legitimately, there are some people out there who have fell on hard times that legitimately can't pay. And, they're just trying to protect their family. But you have other people out there who abuse the system.
So are you saying don't be a landlord, don't buy investment property, or just be wary of some of the issues?
Just be wary of some of the issues. And my key point is do your digging and do your due diligence and get to know who's living there. And sometimes it's a matter, it could be great. Like, a great tenant is worth their weight in gold. And if you can get somebody in there that will respect your property, it could be a great investment strategy, but really pay attention to who's living there and who you're renting to.
One of the other podcasts you had was Realtor Acronyms, which I found kind of interesting because I didn't know some of the acronyms that you guys were using. Tell us about some of those.
Well, so like our big one is MLS. So MLS is the multiple listing service, and that's something that we use quite frequently. And, but there's a difference between MLS and Realtor.ca. So MLS, or in Toronto or Oakville, Mississauga area, we call it TREB. So that's the Toronto Real Estate Board. So there's a difference between Realtor.ca that the public has access to, and there's a different MLS, like a listing database that the realtors have access to. So we use the terms kind of interchangeably. The one that I mentioned that I found funny that I see in listings, and when I moved to Toronto, I didn't realize what it stood for, and it was in ELF. And when you read it, it looks like elf, and I'm like, oh, what's an elf? What's an elf? It's an electrical light fixture. So, or when you see things like, we only have a limited amount of characters in the write-up. So we have to be as creative as possible, and we have to use acronyms like in our write-up. So if you see SS, it's usually stainless steel. One I mentioned at the top of a listing, you'll see the DOM, D-O-M, and that's the days on the market. Or you'll see SC, so that's sold conditional. And as realtors, we're not allowed disclosing the terms of the listing, or the terms of the agreement until it's sold firm. So you'll see it's sold conditional. It'll be showing active on Realtor.ca, but on our end, we see it as sold conditional. So it's just little acronyms, and we have about 50 of them that we use interchangeably, and I just kind of went over a few that I thought were kind of useful, and a little bit of comedy as well, just tongue-in-cheek kind of definitions as well. So,
any others that you want to mention?
The other one that we'll see is SPP or ESC. So when we see SPP, that usually means the sale of purchaser's property. So that means the buyer has to sell a home before they can firm up on the deal or the transaction. And then in the Toronto Real Estate Board, we see ESC. So that we call it an escape clause. And that basically it's the same thing as an SPP. So that means they have a property to sell as well.
I got to tell you, understanding these acronyms is so critically important. I was at a Super Bowl party, and people kept on using the word goat to describe Tom Brady. And I was, what the heck is a goat? Like, why are you calling Tom Brady a goat?
The greatest of all time.
I never knew that. When did this become a thing?
Yeah, he is the greatest.
I never knew it. So some people have been telling me, maybe because of some of the racial issues in the last year, that some people are thinking about changing master bedroom to principal bedroom.
Yes, or main bedroom. Yes.
Really?
Yes, so that's been actually with our company. It's been mandated as well. So it's no longer considered the master bedroom. We call it the main bedroom because of the negative connotations with that. So
That's interesting. Any other changes like that?
that was the biggest one this year that I saw. But I still see elves. That's what makes me happy when I see that written.
One of the other ones that you did was talking about selling in the winter. What are the
Yes.
issues about selling in the winter?
Well, a lot of people think that the springtime is the best time to sell. And then, however, I always find the wintertime, and like what I've just seen the last few weeks is that the Toronto market has been very strong. And I don't know if it's because we've had milder weather, people have been cooped up, they have nothing else to do or buy, but we've seen a crazy amount of buyers and offers come in on properties. So usually the issue, people think the home show is better in the springtime. There's usually more buyers out there, but I disagree. Sometimes it's quality versus quantity. So you may, in the wintertime, we typically see less showings, but if you're looking in the dead of winter, especially when it's minus 20 out, you have definitely more motivated buyers. So you may have maybe 5 showings, but these are 5 motivated people who are going out. So in my podcast, I just talk about different things to consider if you do have your home listed in the wintertime. So having been on showings all weekend, having to, going to a home that's been freshly shoveled to the walkway and salted is definitely a more enjoyable experience than having to traipse through snowbanks. And just little considerations too, like, having a place to showcase like where you'd put your boots, your coats, make it cozy, make it welcoming, have the lights turned on. So just, it's always about the details. And if you can make the first impression a good one, that usually goes a long way. And I recommend people right now, like there's a shortage of homes and condos on the market right now. And now is a great opportunity. But, there's always the spring market as well. Some people prefer to go on the market in the springtime, but there's always a good time to go on. It's a matter of managing your expectations.
Isn't the winter usually quite slow for real estate?
It hasn't been. Usually, like what I've seen is the first 2 weeks of January are typically a little bit slower. People are coming out of the holiday haze and they're coming out of the woodwork. But this year, we didn't have our traditional spring and fall market due to COVID. So typically our spring market would start sort of mid-January, February, and would go to April, May. So the people who are looking in the spring market are looking to be in their home for the summertime. Usually it's based around the school schedule and they want their kids settled in the home in the summertime and start the school year. But last year with COVID and the lockdown starting in March, it pushed our spring market back. So we're typically busier in March, April, May. We were busy June, July, August. It slowed down in the fall and now it's been extremely busy. Listings are going in multiple offers, they're selling within hours. So our market's been quite strong, even though we are in February in the dead of winter right now.
If you had a pool, would you list in the winter or wait until the spring and you can showcase it?
I tell people, if you have a pool in the summertime, get some beautiful photos taken in the summertime, even if you're not planning on selling. And just so if you ever do decide to sell your property in the winter, you have those photos. So the pool is definitely a nice to have, but a lot of people can they can imagine what a pool looks like in their backyard. So as long as the inside of the home, but having said that, pools are not necessarily a good thing for every buyer. It's a very individual buyer choice too. So it could be good to have it covered in snow.
One of the other podcasts that you had that I thought was kind of interesting was 3 things to consider when buying into a community.
Yes. So one thing I represent a lot of people that are coming in from out of province, out of country, out of city. So when they're moving into a neighborhood, what I usually recommend is for you to get used to driving. And because our commute times in the GTA can be quite long, get used. So if you go into the office, you work in the financial core and you're looking at buying in Mississauga, Oakville, get a sense of what your commute's going to look like. And basically, if you don't like it now, you're not going to like it when it's snowy, when it's rainy, when you're tired. So really get familiar with that. And the other thing to consider too, it's the fact, the amount of time that you're spending in your home, in your neighborhood. So if you have young children, I always say, look out for things like hockey nets, look out for kids like in the neighborhood, like go at off hours, go when people are home typically. So on the weekend. So if you have young children, you really want them to have friends to play with, then those are important things. So I look at, are we seeing minivans in the driveway? Are we seeing like older people? So those are things to consider. And the other thing to consider is how you park. So I have seen full out brawls happen over parking. And, in the GTA, especially in Toronto proper, we see a lot of the older homes that have mutual driveways. So those are important things to consider as well, because you'll be sharing that driveway with your neighbor. And I have seen some disastrous arguments break out over parking. So
that's interesting. So what you're doing is you're saying that you really got to come at different times of the day or the week to check out the place where you're going to be living, to see the neighborhood, not just
absolutely.
the house.
Yes. And it's and things to consider too. If you like to walk to stores and coffee shops, really walk around the neighborhood, and, you can kind of tell, the home might be fantastic, but if you don't like what you see around it, that's where you'll be living, and it's very expensive to buy. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable coming home. But I really do recommend that, commuting, because that can mean the difference of an extra hour or 2 hours on the road every day. And if you see it, a lot of my clients come in on the weekend, so we don't have rush hour or as bad, and they get a kind of a false sense of oh, the drive's not that bad. Well, I tell you, it can be very bad, and it can really impact your quality of life.
One of the biggest issues with real estate agents is commissions, and you wrote a podcast on what you need to know about a realtor's commission. Tell us about that.
So sellers are the seller and the seller's agent are the ones that determine your commission. So determine the commission. So usually the standard rate is 5%. And it means the agent and the sellers have come up with that rate. And the thing to consider is who's paying for what. So in my case, I offer full service. So with my fee or my remuneration, I cover staging, I cover movers, I cover storage lockers, all the photography, you name it, I'm covering. But that's coming out of my personal money. And I'm investing into your home. So some people don't realize that the listing agent has actually invested quite a bit of money and time and effort before getting the home ready to go on the market. So what we do is typically, let's just use 5% for an example. 5% is divided between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. And the typical rate that you see on a listing is 2.5% for the buyer's agent. And that is the rate, that's the standard. So the sellers have negotiated that rate beforehand. And what some people don't realize is that it's the agent's personal money, the listing agent, that's put the money into the home. And sometimes it's a lot of money, and we don't get paid until the home closes. So when I use the word close, that's when the buyer takes possession of the home. And sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's months. So agents are investing a lot of time and money into it. And for heaven forbid the home doesn't sell or something happens, and the seller's agent doesn't get that money back. So it's a lot of money that they've invested, and it becomes a cash flow issue. And the public perception is if they see a home that sells overnight, they think that the real estate agent, they made a quick buck. They don't understand that was a fast sale. And the other thing to consider is the buyer's agent's fee. So the buyer's agent, they're not investing a lot of money up front in terms of capital to invest into the staging and photography, but they're investing their time. We're doing a lot of research on the properties beforehand. We're booking showings. Sometimes it takes weeks, months, and sometimes years to find a property. So that's the fee. So I think sometimes people see that 5% or that 2.5, they don't understand the time and effort that went into the home to prepare it or to facilitate the deal. And the other thing to consider is that once the offer is accepted, that's when the work actually starts. So we have to coordinate with lawyers, mortgage brokers, the paperwork associated, the purchaser's visit. Sometimes I'm coordinating contractors, decorators, movers. So it really becomes a little bit more of a project management. So people don't realize or understand or appreciate the amount of time and effort that the agent's putting into it. So I want to kind of shed a bit of light and a bit more of a perspective on what that fee covers.
Now, there's some firms that offer lower fees and some people that sell their homes on their own. Yes. Is it worth paying 5%?
Well, it depends. Just like day traders, some people are comfortable buying their own stocks and buying their own investments. So it's a personal preference. And sometimes that savings can actually cost you. There's a commercial that I saw, I don't know if it's still on, but it was, we saved $15,000 representing ourselves. Well, that savings may have cost you if you didn't have the right representation or the right realtor working on your behalf to advise you accordingly. Maybe that $15,000, you may have saved $15,000, but what if you lost 200 or 300,000? So it really comes down to comfort. Some people are comfortable booking all of their travel, their itineraries, and some people prefer hiring the service of a travel agent. So I kind of compare the two.
We're chatting tonight with Anna Oliver, who is a real estate broker across the GTA. We're talking about a bunch of podcasts that she has posted in regards to lots of different issues in regards to buying or selling a home. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Anna in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're chatting tonight about real estate and lots of things that one has to be mindful of and thinking about when you're thinking about either buying or selling a home. With Anna Oliver, who is a broker with Sotheby's. It's not a brand that is as prevalent for me, at least, but one that Anna says is doing well in Toronto, and she covers the whole GTA area. And out of interest to me is that she published a whole bunch of podcasts on a whole bunch of different issues in regards to real estate. So I wanted to ask him about them. And one that I really found interesting, Anna, was Increase the Value of Your Home with Anna Oliver. Please, 3 tips in 70 seconds that can increase the value of your home.
Yes.
What are they?
So I posted my podcast on that. That was kind of tips, like people are cooped up in the winter months with COVID lockdown. So some easy ways if you're looking for something fun to do and you want to, if you're considering selling or you just want to make your home a little bit nicer because you're spending so much more time in your home. So some easy tips. So my one recommendation was, a fresh coat of paint. So that's something easy you can do on your own. It's quite cost effective and it makes a big difference. And the second one that I found interesting was people are finding creative uses of space in their homes. So one, there used to be people that, they go to offices and now they have this guest room that they never use because guests can't come over as often. So they've converted it into like very cool, great work from home spaces, home gym. So they're utilizing their space in a little bit more of a creative way, and they're looking for larger spaces. And I've seen some people use the space underneath their stairs and made a cool office or play area for their kids. So kind of looking for some creative ways to increase the value. And I always say, like, any recommendations, if you are going to increase the value, it's always rooms like the bathroom and the kitchens, because those are always the key parts that the key points of homes that people look at as well. So any investment in your bathroom, kitchens, I usually recommend. So.
And when you're talking about investments in bathrooms or kitchens, are you talking about major renovations or just cleanups or what?
Sometimes it's just a cleanup. Like I've worked with a contractor that were able to resurface and repurpose cabinets. So some homes, like, a few years ago, the trends were beautiful oak cabinets, and now they're considered a little bit dated. So we're able to repurpose the cabinets with like a fresh coat of paint and cure them. So make them from a wood, like a deep wood color, to a nice white, bright color, and freshen it up, replacing the door handles. So it's something very inexpensive. It makes a huge difference. So I have some great before and after pictures of like some easy fixes or like, I don't want to say renovations, but just like elevate the space or upgrade the space. So the bathroom, kitchen. So it's actually fairly inexpensive and it made a big impact.
So people tell me that you often get your money out of renovations to bathrooms and kitchens, but not out of necessarily other rooms. Is that true?
That is true to some aspect. But the thing is with renovations, you have to be very careful because you don't want to make it too individual or too trendy, because those design choices can become dated very quickly. And I think of like in the 80s when it was very popular to have phones on the walls or PA systems in your home. Well, that was great for the technology then, but now technology has changed. So now when you see that, it just looks dated. Or when you see things like appliances that are integrated like that. So basically they're invisible. They look like cabinetry in the walls. And now like it's more trendy to have stainless steel appliances or black or colored appliances. So you have to be very careful. So when you're looking at good investments and renovations, you want to make sure you're doing something that's a bit timeless and classic as well. And I would go with something that appeals more to the masses. So you want to make sure that you make it as individual, that you like it. But if something happens and you have to sell it, you want to make sure it's something that would appeal to more people, because people don't want to pay for your taste. Not saying that your taste isn't good. It's just you want to make sure that it appeals to more people than not.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And so if someone's interested in selling their house, are you recommending that they renovate, or no, you would just do what you call staging?
Well, right now, because the market has become more of a seller's market, sellers are lucky. They don't have to do as much work as we'd recommend a few years ago when it was a slower market. So I usually recommend having a realtor come in, give us a chance to come take a look at the home and give us recommendations. And sometimes it's a matter of, maybe a fresh coat of paint in certain rooms and leaving it as is. And sellers are lucky that because the market is so strong, they don't have to do that much. So sometimes, like I said, it's just like resurfacing some cabinets, making sure that the photos really stand out. It has a very good first impression. So sometimes, like I said, a fresh coat of paint and tidying up to showcase the space can go a long way. So it really depends on the home, and it really depends on the area as well. So
I've been told that you need curb appeal. Curb appeal. What's curb appeal?
Curb appeal is your first impression. So think of it, you only have one chance to make a great first impression. So you want to make sure your home is nice. So like in the winter, it's easier because white, fresh snow makes every home look great. So just details, like you want to make sure that your front door is painted, that the details, like the numbers, everything looks crisp and a nice first impression. So, but in the springtime, when the snow is melting and it's a little bit gloomy, things like potted plants, some fresh flowers, and even updating the numbers on your home, just some like simple in a price
Updating the numbers. What do you mean updating the numbers?
Like, so the numbers on your home, so your address numbers. So like, for example,
people can find you.
Yeah, so people can find you, and just so it stands out a little bit, and just like so it's fresh, and it's like your home looks well taken care of. So the curb appeal, it shows that you had pride of ownership, and people will look at that. It's setting the tone. Like, oh, if their home looks nice from the outside, it'll probably look nice on the inside, and they probably took very good care of their home. So it just creates a nice first impression. So that's why the curb appeal. And in the summertime, with nice lawns, you want to make sure the grass is nicely cut. It's watered. The fresh flowers go a long way. Sometimes even mulch like makes a big difference. It photographs well just to tidy it up. And you just want to make sure you're on top of those things.
You also had an interesting post about and this may be more for the real estate agent or broker themselves and for the client, but I think it's important for the client as well, on whether you wanted to be part of a team or not. And I've seen more and more of these people advertising teams. And then I guess my concern is when I go with a team, I don't know whether I'm getting the top person or I'm getting some junior person.
No, and that's an excellent point, Brian. So I actually started my career on a team. And we had about 15 people on our team. So we were basically, just think of it like an assembly line. So we had our primary listing agent. Her face was on the billboards, on the signs, and that was the name of the company. And she had a team of buyer's agents. She had a marketing person. She had somebody answering calls, booking showings. Because we were so busy, she couldn't do it all. And she had a person assigned. But the problem with the big teams, like to your point, is that you want to know who you're dealing with. So a big team is fantastic. They usually have more market share. They have bigger budgets. They can advertise your home. But then they have people to help them, because you can only be with one person at a time. And it's a great way to make sure that you get maximum exposure for your home. So as opposed to somebody who's just kind of on their own. So you might get more one-on-one service, but you're limited to what that person can offer. So for example, you'll see some people that they're on their own. They might have an assistant, but you know that when you call them, you get that person. They usually know who's been in and out of your home for showings. They're on top of things. But then the flip side to that is that they usually have a smaller budget. They can't answer their phone all the time, so they may not be able to give you the response. So there's pluses and minuses to both, and you want to make sure that you hire somebody that you're comfortable with. And having said the big teams, oftentimes if you express your concerns about maybe being passed off to an underling or a junior, if you express that to your agent who may be running a very successful team, ask who will be my point person, who will be the one showing my home. And it's just a matter of managing expectations. So there's pluses and minuses to both. I have worked on a big team, and I have worked on my own too. And sometimes there's a bit of a hybrid. So we'll see agents who have a partner that, one person might be doing the showings and be more the face of the business. Then you have somebody working behind the scenes, answering emails and booking the appointments and the follow-up, doing the marketing. So it's really a matter of personal preference.
And so what's your recommendation? Should I hire someone with a team or not?
I would interview a few, maybe compare. So talk to somebody who maybe runs a larger team, because it depends on your home and what you're looking for. Are you looking for your home to be, if you're not looking for that personal one-on-one service, a big team might be where you're more comfortable with, because they usually have bigger budgets. They have access to more Maybe they're taking out bigger ads, they have a larger market share, but then you're dealing with maybe a junior agent. But if you prefer the one-on-one service, you need a little bit more hand-holding, you may need more of an advisor approach, then but I recommend talking to both and getting to know, and it just treat it like a first date. You want to make sure you understand, ask some important questions like, if I were to call you, what are your boundaries? When can I expect response time? Who will be booking my showings? Who will be the follow-up? And the important thing is to consider when an offer comes in, who will be negotiating on your behalf? So if you have one of these big teams, is it the guy that you hired or the woman that you hired, or will it be a junior agent? And the other thing too is ask like their travel schedule if they go away, because I know some people, they have big teams, but they really enjoy their personal time. So if an offer comes in on off hours, who will be the one handling your offer and representing you on your behalf? So ask all those questions at the beginning. And if you don't like the answers, then you don't have to use them either. So treat it like a first date and ask all those questions. And, they may seem personal or uncomfortable.
Boy, are you allowed to ask that many questions on a first date? I didn't know that.
Of course you are. Of course, you want to make sure there's a second date. And, and the thing is, like, most realtors, like, they want to form a relationship. Like, they're in it for the long haul, and they want to help and they want to take.
Okay. Let's talk about relationships here for a second. I was also really intrigued. You had quite an attractive picture of you, I think, on a rooftop patio, and it said breaking up is hard to do. And I was going, oh my God, what's this about? But it was breaking up with a client. Yes. Tell us about breaking up with a client.
Well, I'm glad that caught your eye because, people get bored of just seeing like homes that are for sale and listed and all this stuff. So, a lot of the time, like I've been selling, like I said earlier, for 18 years, and I've been very fortunate. I have repeat clients and I do a lot on referral basis. And I have been with my clients sometimes from the beginning of their relationships. I've seen their children grow up, and it's, you become part of the family. And unfortunately, I've been part of many people's families for a long time. And, I've been very fortunate, but sometimes I get those clients that it just doesn't work out, and it's draining. It's not the right fit. And it's like as a self-employed person, when do you cut your losses? And so that post was on breaking up with clients. And so I kind of picked, some people asked like, God, that client sounded awful that you were talking about. And I said, no, that was like some bits and pieces from different experiences that I had over the years. And, just like comfort levels. And again, establishing those boundaries, like appointments, especially now with COVID, appointment times are very important. If the appointment's at 12, we have a very small window. So be considerate to the agent who maybe rearrange plans to show you a home at the last minute. Be considerate of the seller that's leaving the home. So I had clients that were they were 40 minutes late all the time.
40 minutes late.
40 minutes late. And, it got
get in the car and leave.
But the thing is, you've invested so much time. I've had other people that they don't respect personal time, and they would call 17, 18 times in a row until you answered for nothing important. And, I'm here to listen. I'm here to help, but sometimes it's just not the right fit. So you got to break up. And it was very difficult to do, but.
We're chatting tonight with Anna Oliver, who is a real estate broker with Sotheby's, about real estate and a whole bunch of different issues in regards to real estate. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're talking everything about real estate tonight, and we've talked about landlord issues, tenant issues, selling during the winter, how to fire a client, real estate commissions, staging renovations. Anna, you've done a very comprehensive job. Let me ask you a question. With real estate, it's pretty competitive. Do you have to be nice with other agents, or is it unbelievably cutthroat?
It depends. Like, I like to play nice. I like to play fair because I always look at it. You never know when your paths are going to cross again. So there are approximately 50,000 realtors in the area. And, this is people's livelihoods. They're supporting families. And they're, like I mentioned earlier, they're investing a lot of personal money. And some people's approach is that they like to bully, they like to intimidate, they like to posture. And that's a strategy that I've never believed in. I think we're all trying to represent our clients in the best possible way. And the best way is to be respectful and be nice, and let's get the deal together. And, let's make their clients happy. So I think the best way of doing that is like more of a collaborative approach. And, the undermining and the bullying, I just don't think it doesn't fare well. And, there's certain people that I've worked with on many deals over the last few years, and it's a pleasure to work with. And there's certain names that I see and I just cringe. I'm like, oh God, I hope it's not one of those ones again, just because it was so grueling and undermining. But I have to say, most people, like most agents out there, are fantastic. We've had great, we all understand, we're all in it together, we're all trying to help. But, like I said, there's always some bad apples out there who think that bullying and intimidating and making the other agent feel bad is the best way. And I disagree.
Best to go with a part-time agent or full-time agent?
That is a controversial topic. I know some great agents who started off as part-time agents. They didn't want to jump in both feet because it is 100% commission. So, they're supporting families and they work part-time. But the challenge with that is, we work off hours and we work, when most people don't work. So you have to be available in order to be successful. You need to look at it. It's not even just a career, it's a lifestyle. So most agents are, giving up time with their families, their friends, their families, they're rearranging things for other people. And I think in order to be successful, you need to be full-time.
If you're a full-time agent, you're out showing almost all evenings and all weekends. How do you have a relationship?
It's about managing expectations, and it's a matter of being upfront and honest that sometimes you'll have to drop things in order to facilitate the client. And most people are understanding with it. I've been fortunate. Anybody who I've been involved with has been understanding. Maybe they haven't been because I'm still single, so maybe they haven't been that understanding. But it definitely is challenging, especially when you have children and you have families, because we work on off hours, and that's why partnering up with somebody or partnering up with somebody who can complement or work on hours or available when you want to take some time off. So it's important to have that work-life balance. So I think it's definitely important to have those conversations at the beginning and kind of express when you'll be working. And sometimes you do have to cancel at the last minute.
I noticed you posted something about an HHT trip. Yeah. What's that?
So that is an acronym for a house hunting trip. So I've been fortunate with my family and my experience with working with military. I've helped a lot of military members and their families with their house hunting trip. And this is the time of year when most military people rumors are happening about upcoming postings. So that's when they'll be transferred. And this is an important time. And with our serving members, oftentimes they don't know where they'll be posted. They get word or rumors will be rumbling around this time of year that you might be moving to Toronto or Ottawa or Winnipeg. So this is a time of year that can be very stressful. And my video was sort of to help military members and how to prepare to make their HHT as easy as possible, because they only have 7 days to come to a city. A lot of people, when they come on their house hunting trips, they have 5 days, and oftentimes they're not familiar with the market. And it was in order of just some easy tips to make it a less stressful than an already stressful time for them, especially for our members who are coming from smaller markets.
Finally, I noticed that you were a big supporter of something called the True Patriot Love Dinner. What's that?
Yes, so the True Patriot Love is a charitable organization that helps members. They focus on helping military members and their families, as well as members who are leaving the full-time forces, the Canadian Armed Forces, and to integrate back into, I don't want to say into society, but into the civilian world. And it's a fundraiser. So our big fundraiser is the True Patriot Love Gala, which is usually in November. And we offer different incentives, like we'll host fireside chats with prominent military members on leadership, fundraising, golf activities, or golf events, or across Toronto in Ontario. And there's an organization that was formed in 2008 by Sean Francis, who's with MedCan. So it's a charity that means a lot to me. And this year we were very fortunate. We had a phenomenal online gala that we were able to raise over $1 million for military members and their families. And one of our charities in kind that we help, our cause in kind, is to send military member their children to summer camp. And it's a great cause. And we're just trying to get the word out to help our members, not only when they're in uniform, but the family, the strength behind the uniform, their families, and sacrifices that their family members give, and help them when they decide to give up their military career, help them, find great careers. So yeah, so True Patriot Love is a cause very close to me.
Anna Oliver, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about the real estate business and the market, and a bunch of suggestions. If people want to contact you, how do they do that?
You can follow me on Instagram at the Anna Oliver or my website at annaoliver.ca, and you can find me quite easily there.
Thank you so much. Well, that's the real estate market discussion for tonight. Thanks for joining us on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Good night, everybody.